Welcome to Politics and Psychology, and we're only a few days away from the general election for the presidential election of 2024. And to help us de stress, not have family drama, but to be able to enjoy the whole month of November and the whole month of December, I invite you to listen today because today I will be interviewed by James Kelleher, and his name might sound familiar if you are a fan of the 90 Day Fiancé series. So he is one of their new therapists on there helping giving marital advice and challenges. And so with our conversation today, we're giving you advice and challenging you to not give in to political stress or political messaging related drama and anxiety producing content, but instead engage in self-care, indulge in your favorite foods next Wednesday, and how to not have politics ruin your life, your health, or your important relationships. So listen in, and I will be back with you at the end of the episode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Living Life with James. Today, we have Dr. Renee Carr, who is a political and corporate advisor, as well as a psychologist. Dr. Carr is known as the problem solver, and you'll see why in a second. She has so many great solutions to social issues, amazing insight. Please help me welcome Dr. Renee Carr.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to kind of get into it because we are in a time right now. The goal of this podcast was to really be able to provide some tools and just enlighten people of how we can get through political stress, the anxiety of elections coming up. And then after elections, how are we going to navigate through this world of the new president? Whether you are happy, whether you're unhappy, whether you're disappointed, how to manage the emotions, how to be able to connect and talk with family over the hot topic of political issues. And I am super excited you're here to help us navigate through all of that.
Yes. Well, it can definitely be very stressful. And a lot of people are stressed because we have so much bombardment, not only in our text messages, our mailers in the post office, but our TV commercials, our YouTube commercials. So it's bombarding us with this message. And then, as far as anxiety, there's a valid reason if you're experiencing anxiety. And that's because the messages that we're hearing from the campaign are more fear-based as a way to motivate you. So the anxiety is real because that's being done intentionally. So then the tip would be just to recognize that it is a political strategy to manipulate your emotions and to just try not to give into it.
I've heard you say this in the past. I would love to hear a little bit more about this kind of concept of it being fear-based. You're right. The reality is it creates this anxiety, these nerves as we think about what's happening and, past debates and things that are in the, news on social media. Tell us more about your thoughts on it being fear-based.
Right. So fear is a higher level of anxiety. And anxiety, for the most part, comes from your thoughts. And so whenever you have a thought, that thought then leads to an emotion. So if the thought is from external campaign messaging of, if you don't win, or if our team doesn't win, then your whole family is going to be killed in a sandstorm. Or if you don't win, then the whole world's going to be taken over by zombies and the world as we know it will be gone. So that's what you're hearing. So you're thinking that. And so then because you have that very detrimental thinking, then you experience the emotion of anxiety, which then leads to your behavior. And then you're either acting very anxious, you're very low energy or low patience, low tolerance with others, or you just might be so fearful, then you're constantly consuming the news to try to get rid of the anxiety.
That's right. Dr. Carr, we're being dramatic when we're saying, the idea of, the world being taken over, almost this idea of zombies or apocalypse. But the reality is I've heard, and I know I've had my own anxieties, and I've had clients that talked about anxieties of, civil war and what's going to happen. And, America's going to be divided. And that can create a lot of, as you said, fear and stress in someone.
Right. I think if you remember, so yes, the zombie is a good way to have a laugh at, how much intensity and how much drama and fear that's being imbued into our political messaging. But if you think about it, just like zombies are not going to happen, then our world and our country is not going to collapse if one person wins or if the other person wins. So if you just remember that you have political power not only to vote, but not only to let your whole life be controlled by a campaign. You know, even if you are a political strategist, you still recognize, okay, we won one or we lost one, and you get ready for the next campaign. So don't let the campaign or don't let the election ruin or control your life, and recognize that I have a vote. I'll do my duty to vote. But then after that, whether I win or I lose, my life will still go on.
I just had a moment, right? That's exact. Just a breathing moment. It's still going to go on. We are going to be okay.
We're going to be okay. Yeah.
And with that said, can you maybe give us some practical tools with how to navigate all of this political stress right now, with thinking about what's out there in the media, with thinking about leading up to the next 2 weeks, you know, the anxiety of who's going to win and how are we going to handle this? What are some practical tools?
Right. Well, first, remember, don't give your power away, and don't believe that if your team loses, that you're going to be, you know, your life is going to end as you know it. Also don't believe that if your person wins, that your life is going to suddenly be changed and you're going to live in abundance and rainbows everywhere. So one, don't recognize that you don't need to give too much of your power or your mood and your life away. But also think about if you do have your person not win, to honor yourself with the experience of mourning. So, you know, you put so much into this person winning. You want this person to win. You're being bombarded with, we have to win, we have to win. So if your person does lose, then it's okay to recognize, wow, I didn't win, or my person didn't win, and I'm feeling a sense of loss from that. And to just be mindful that, okay, well, my person lost, and I'm still going to be okay. But to kind of prepare, you know, we can use inoculation, you know, how we have like the vaccines. You give yourself a little dose of that.
Brilliant concept.
So then just start preparing. Okay, well, what will I do? Start when you listen to this or watch this episode today. If my person does lose, what can I start thinking? Okay, let me start thinking about it now. What can I still do? How can I still be happy? So start preparing yourself mentally with the thoughts to then manage your emotions, and then you use that to then guide your behavior. And one of the behaviors that you can do is you can have a date with yourself planned. You can have a self-care week for your post-election. So start getting what are your favorite things that you want to eat for that the very next day after the announcement. Like, have a plan in place regardless. And then take care of yourself that way. So whether you win, it can be a celebration. And if your person doesn't win, it can still be a celebration of you and engaging in your self-care.
I love this. You know, it's a concept in therapy, you know, this idea of looking ahead, right? If we look ahead, it's almost like we're confronting those anxieties and we're having, as you said, a plan. We're being prepared. It almost feels lighter. It makes us almost excited to look forward to, okay, I went through this mourning phase, but now I'm going to take time for myself. And I love what you're saying, you know, almost make that day for yourself. Think about some foods, whether we got some comfort foods or going for a walk, being in nature, how I can plan for the aftermath. So I'm sending myself the message that I'm okay. Things aren't bad as I may be making or hearing they will be.
And then just planning for it now. So inoculate your thinking that, what will I do if my person loses? So plan for the worst. You know, when you're in the military, you also plan for the worst outcome so you can be readily prepared and you can be the most trained for it. So then just prepare yourself. What is the worst that can happen if my person loses? And then just start preparing those thinking. And then what if that? And then what if that? To then help yourself get to a more realistic understanding that one political campaign or presidency is not going to be the hell and doom and gloom as it's being portrayed.
You mentioned the power of thoughts.
That's right.
Our mindset. And I love that you're saying inoculations. Let's get our vaccinations now for not just the political stress and anxiety, but just kind of a concept or a tool for life.
Yes. And you mentioned comfort foods, and it's 3,500 calories for a pound. So even if you have an extra donut, extra whipped cream on your mocha latte, an extra piece of pizza, an extra cupcake
You'll be
while you're
okay.
doing your self-care, you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
I love, I love that. And, because it puts our lives in perspective.
Yes, yes.
I always talk about, with clients recently that have really been getting anxious over what's going to happen in elections, talking about the whole concept of knowing when to have information, the concept of information control, right? Controlling the information, knowing when to put the phone down, knowing when to turn the TV and the news off,
Right.
knowing when to say, this is enough because it's creating these feelings, thoughts, emotions that may be too overwhelming for me.
Mm-hmm. I think if you can recognize that you're getting a headache when you're watching the news, or a headache after watching the news, if you can't go to sleep because you're having political dreams, then you're being inundated with too much political messaging. So in that case, say, okay, I will only listen for 20 minutes, or I'll listen to one show. Or if you love watching the news, then say, okay, well, I enjoy watching the news for the sake of hearing information, but for self-care, I'll balance it by limiting that. And that might be for just 2 hours a day. And then after that, what you're receiving is information. But if you're anxious about it, then you're having an adrenaline buildup. So then go for a walk to help get some of that adrenaline outside of your body. So take it all in, but then don't hold it in and then get a headache or a backache or an upset stomach. Release that built up adrenaline by going for a walk or going for a run.
I'm so glad you said that, because what I'm hearing is the idea that we can control our situation. We can't control what's happening around us in, this crazy political climate and everything going on.
Correct.
So bringing it back to what is in your control.
Mm-hmm. And also be mindful that you can be in control of what messages you listen to. If you recognize that you only listen to one political TV commentator or one particular news channel, then you're exposing yourself to one message. So be an informed audience or an informed viewer by listening to different points of view. So that way, even if you are stressed out by listening to one person, you'll hear another channel or another person saying just as much about another issue or the opposing side of that issue. So if you balance out the information, then you can say, wait a minute, if they're both having this extreme thinking and extreme messaging, then maybe it's more of a manipulation. And I can see that, but I'll just take the news for what it's worth, make my decision, go out for a walk and have my extra whipped cream.
My extra whipped cream. Dr. Carr, that's brilliant, because the reality is, we can really be consumed with, different sides and thoughts, and, it can be overwhelming. Again, I use this word overwhelming because I think everyone, or at least I'm hearing it from clients, how people are trying their best to cope, and not many people have these tools.
Correct. It is very overwhelming. But if you are doing your part by continually exposing yourself to nonstop news, and that's something that you can control. And if you do hear it, whether it's 20 minutes or 2 hours, then you can also be strategic and recognize, okay, this is a news channel. And it's not like the olden days when we had the town crier giving out the most important information. We now have news channels that are depending on your views and your likes and your watch time. And they want to use the most salacious titles and sound bites to get you anxious so that you can't resolve that anxiety unless you watch them further. And they need to have you watch longer so they can get the monetization off of your views, off of your emotions.
Okay.
So if you recognize that the news itself is less altruistic and more economically driven, that can also help you recognize that, let me not get played. Let me not my emotions.
There's a tool right there.
That's right. Don't let my emotions be monetized, and I'll limit my time, and then still make sure I make a wise decision independent of what I'm being force fed on the news.
Listen, you're saying they got their strategies. I need to have mine.
That's right.
I want to jump back to something you said, because it's really, I think it's crucial, just navigating this world. We need to be open-minded. And as we hear some of the comments, as we're going through debates and we hear friends and family, and we get caught up in kind of the controversy of picking, who your team is, so to speak. people often see things through one lens. And the reality, I think, just in life is try to look at both ends, try to understand, different perspectives. You don't have to believe, right? You don't have to say, I'm completely in support of this opposing team, but let's just have some information.
Yes, yes. And have information and also empathy. Recognize that although you might be a savvy, intelligent viewer and able to listen to both sides at your,
Yes.
holiday dinner or your work conversation, they may not be as balanced and they may not be as open to information. And they may be mourning or they may be buying into the fear-based messaging. So just be also compassionate with recognizing that they too are being manipulated. And how can you not give in to that manipulation to reinforce their anxiety?
Look, I'm like, keep going, Dr. Carr, preach. I wish I had a team, where they do that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They do that on YouTube. Yeah.
They're sounding off, right? Because that is a sound off. This is a clip right here. The reality is, as we go through this, I think probably the most important tool, let's make sure we have the skill of empathy. Let's make sure we are listening as we go through this process, because we get so caught up, and I can't tell you, just from hearing, seeing, personal, professional, social media, the news, there is so much hatred. There is so much unkindness.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And people are just spewing mean and hurtful words. And if we can just back up and remember, we're all human, how to extend some empathy, kindness, and just listen. I think that would really change the approach for some people.
It definitely would, but unfortunately, hate is being concocted and continued for political gain. But also, the only individuals who are more likely to accept that hate-based, fear-based messaging are individuals who within themselves are already feeling very insecure, whether it's about themselves, their future, their identity, or their economics. And so if I'm already feeling as if I'm being deprived financially, I'm going to be less likely to be compassionate toward giving someone else an opportunity if that's part of a political campaign messaging. If I'm told someone's taking away your opportunities or your money, and I'm already feeling insecure and coming from a place of not being empathic and not being considerate, then I will be more likely to give in to that.
So, Dr. Carr, the one thing that comes to mind, you're right. The reality is people are dealing with their own securities. People have their own thoughts and feelings. Again, we can't control. Outside of saying, get yourself some therapy and a life coach.
Right.
What are some things that we can do, especially as the holidays are coming, and we'll be through the elections in 2 weeks. Holidays will be upon us. How do we pick up the pieces, so to speak, or, celebrate, bask in joy and happiness, not rub it in the other person's face? How do we deal with the aftermath around friends and family, where there could be political divides, where there could be insecurities within individuals? What are some tools or tips to get us through the aftermath of elections and help
the family dinners?
Yeah, at the family dinners.
I think one, recognize that if you are, your candidate won and you're feeling happiness, someone else is feeling a sense of loss. So then be considerate to recognize that they too are experiencing loss and then mourning that loss. And you don't have to gloat on it, but you can be compassionate. But you can also be the spokesperson for rationale and the spokesperson for logic and compassion at that dinner table or at your coworkers, holiday dinner. What you can then say is, okay, well, I will be the change that I want to see. And I can use the opportunity to maybe give an injection of truth and compassion to this meal. And what you can do is say, well, what do you think is the worst that could happen? Because, so-and-so won. And let them say what their points are. Because what they really want is to be able to feel heard and to hear their fears heard. So then what you can say is, wow, that does sound scary. What are some of the worst other things that you like? Let them have an opportunity to the stage to express what their fears are, and then say, well, no, that's definitely understandable. But since this happened, now what can we do? How can we, just at this table, what's one thing that we can do to make our lives better or more enjoyable for just this dinner or for just this week? So be the guide.
Yes, be the guide. Dr. Carr, I want to clone you and put you at every family dinner table this holiday season.
Yes, yeah.
You really, I could see why you're the problem solver.
Thank you.
I want to point something out, because just as I'm talking to you,
Mhm.
these issues can, they can bring up emotions, they can bring up, feelings and make your skin crawl or your hands sweat. But talking to you, I feel calm. I
Okay.
hear you are calm. And so the other tool this makes me think of is being emotionally regulated. As you're talking
Yes.
those concepts at the dinner table,
Mhm.
I'm listening to you, and you're bringing up these questions. You're bringing up, these thoughts and sharing and coming from a place of compassion, all
Yes.
while being kind of cool,
Mhm.
all while being a little relaxed and saying, this is how it is, all while
Right.
saying, I'm emotionally regulated.
Right. And I think that's the key, because the campaigns have been so much focused on political division. So if you can
Mhm.
recognize that whether I won or whether my person lost, then I
Yeah.
can still bring unity with first starting within myself, my sense of emotional regulation as well as emotional wholeness. I can experience a loss, I can mourn that. At the same time, I can appreciate that I have my family with me today, that we have food to
Mhm.
eat for enjoying this dinner or this meal, this celebration today. So we can then model that. And then when you go into it, if you're going to be the spokesperson of logic for your family or for that coworker dinner, then say, okay, let me not give into creating further division, but let me come from a place of peace and calm to allow conversations to happen.
I'm hearing key words: peace, calm, compassion,
Yeah.
modeling, right?
Yes.
If we can almost go back to what you were saying, kind of preparing ourselves for interacting with friends and families on a daily basis during holidays. If we can almost have a mantra for ourselves,
Right.
or meditate on this with how can I keep it together
Right.
with going into these social situations.
Right. Think of it again from a place of empowerment. I'm going to maintain my power. The elections have already happened. The candidate has already been announced. But am I going to give further power by letting my life now be controlled for the next 4 years? No, I'm going to still enjoy what I can enjoy and be in control of what I can control.
Yeah.
When as far as mantras, when you have Narcotics Anonymous, let me control what I can control. So then just be mindful of that. And then don't give your happiness away and say, I'm unhappy, I'm disappointed, but I can still be grateful for what I have today.
I always say in therapy, keeping it real. And keeping it
Yes.
real, emotions are going to happen. You are going to experience frustration or anger. And more reason to go back and listen to this, because you have so many great tools to share to help us navigate this process.
Yes, yeah. And even whether it's what about the elections or just going to a family dinner and you hate your family at the holidays, then
Yeah.
you can still be that person by how can we speak the truth about whatever drama happened in our family 10 years ago? How can I be that spokesperson of balance and say, okay, well, yes, that happened, but we have today. We have each
Yeah.
other today. Or how can we move forward knowing that this unpleasant thing has happened, whether in our family or for the elections?
Thank you for that. I'm also going to add, when in these situations, I think there's something nice about knowing and understanding some de-escalation techniques.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
How to pivot and know really how to come back from a heated debate or conversation, how to keep it together, again, emotionally regulate, but also how to have boundaries when you're interacting, right,
Yes.
with friends and families, so that it doesn't get too stressful. You know your limits.
Yes. One thing is to remember the avoidance of the use of the word why, WHY. Whenever in our country someone asks us why did you do this? Why do you think that? Why did you vote for this person?
I'm already defensive and resistant.
Right. Why, and makes the other person defensive automatically. I had to defend why I did something. So instead of saying, well, why did you do this? Say, what motivated you to do that? Or what do you like about that person? Or what are some of the good things that you like? Or what made you
about
make
it.
that decision? Yes. So don't use why if you want to avoid division, if you want to have balance and peace. Focus on what made you do this, or what are some of the things that you like? And you can also add, I'm really interested in what you have to say. What made you vote for that person? What made you think that that person was the ideal candidate? And then say thank you at the end. That can help have a very heated conversation, have some boundaries, not be divisive with just the neurolinguistics of language, and just being word savvy and emotion savvy of then being saying, okay, and thank you for sharing. I really appreciate that.
In therapy, I say it's kind of like the approach of a little softness. Right?
Yes, yes, yes.
And that softness I think it extends not only just gratitude in some situations, but I think it wraps things up in a way to make people feel heard, listened to, and
Mhm.
it breaks down some of the tension.
Yes, and it just shows compassion that again, they might be mourning and very angry. So then let me not add to that whatever they're feeling and thinking, but let me also say, well, what made you X, Y, and Z? Thank you. I really appreciate you sharing. I'm glad that we can have a conversation at our family or at this dinner where we don't have to agree to still be connected.
Mhm. You're bringing it back again: compassion, kindness,
Mhm.
empathy, listening, all of these things that I feel like we as humans, especially in not just political climate right now, but just how the shifts of the world have been,
Right.
these are nice reminders for everyday life.
Yes, yeah, for everyday life. And, the politics and the campaign might just kick off the intensity of it, but you can be kind to yourself and you can be kind to others. And that will go a lot further than general election night.
You are hitting the nail on the head all of with all of these tools and strategies, because it's important,
Mhm,
especially not just the 2 weeks, as I already said, but how
mhm.
we're going to continue to navigate through this. And I think that's so important. And I love everything that you're saying, because it's not just through political and debates, election. It's
Right.
send these things in our lives.
Right, right. And with your new show, as far as marriages and everything, that's part of relationships. So how can we disagree on very important issues,
Yeah.
but how can we still come together, communicate, appreciate each other's different points of view, different actions, and still love each other and still be united, still be connected and not divided?
I just want to sit here and listen to you. I'm like, please tell it to the mountain, Dr. This is going to be a cut and paste, because what you're saying is this applies to relationships. It applies
Mhm.
to our own individual selves and how to
Yes.
navigate life. This
Mhm.
extends to the politics right now. I mean,
Mhm.
yeah, cut and paste this into your world.
Yes, it extends even to the workplace. Different people have different views on how a project should be done or how it should be completed, or what the vision or mission statement can be.
Yeah.
Believe that every single person has something unique in this world, and that's why they are there. So, how can I take your opinion, which could be different, add it to my, I always use like a linking exercise. If you're different people, how can you have what you have that's diametrically opposed to mine, but like salt and sweet, we can still make it a very tasty dish?
I like that. Again, we're talking about, again, extending that empathy and just a little understanding. In
Right.
therapy, I always say, let's get curious, not furious.
Oh, I
And
like that. Hmm.
yeah, because when we're trying to be curious about a situation or a person, whether we're standing behind somebody in the line of the grocery store or
Hmm.
on the road, and we're getting those feelings of road rage because how so much.
Right.
If I can be curious for a moment, it frees us of the
Hmm.
judgments
Hmm.
that often
Hmm.
come, right, with
I
feeling
agree.
curious.
Yeah, I like that. Be curious, not furious. Yes, I like that.
Absolutely. So, wrapping up with the compassion, the role modeling, the curiosity, the just being able to be there and kind of evoke these feelings of what it's like to be in our higher selves and to be
Right.
human, I think
Yeah.
really kind of helps just allow us to get through this time in the next month, but also just life and relationships in a much healthier, smoother way.
I agree. And you mentioned being our higher selves. And in one of our other conversations, we had mentioned as far as like life purpose. And so sometimes you may feel as if someone politically can mean so much to your life, because you might have already unsettledness, unhappiness, dreams unachieved or unfulfilled. And so if you focus on, okay, well then how can I get closer to my life purpose, so that one election won't be all that I have and not all that I'm putting my hopes and dreams on. How can I experience fulfillment and be the master of my domain, of my life, but going after what I choose, what I dream, and what I feel, led to do. And that way, yes, I have the election, but I also have my purpose that I'm living in. And that also brings me fulfillment.
Again, thank you for saying that, because the reality is, whether it's postings, whether it's you driving around town with that particular flag hanging in your car, whether it's a bumper sticker, right? No matter, no matter what party you're voting for, we get so consumed, and that becomes our purpose, even for some, their identity.
Exactly.
Yeah, and here's a reminder to say, people, let's focus that our worlds look so much bigger than just this.
Yes, your vote is extremely important, but you are more than your one vote. You do have a life that you are meant to live as well.
There you go. What a great note to go out on, Dr. Carr. I thank you so much for your.
I love this show. I wish we lived closer. We could be together and chit chat.
Trust and believe. We're I'm going to make this happen one day. I have to meet you in person, and I know that there's lots of hopefully podcasts to come with you, because I just love how you really present yourself, not just on social issues, but just your wisdom and knowledge in general in life. It's so helpful. Thank you for the tools and the tips.
So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm very curious to hear what your self-care plans will be for next week, for after the election. Whether your person wins or loses, remember that your life is still important. We definitely appreciate your vote, which is important, but you also have to live beyond the election. And if you know someone who may be very stressed out or antagonistic or even divisive or depressed because of the current state of the election, the current state of politics, or the post-election result, then please don't hesitate to share this with them and to be compassionate and empathic. And also, whenever you share, remember to continue this conversation and to share this episode using science and love. Walk the path of life. And if you run